Welcome back to the Mobility Project. Today we're going to change courses just a little bit and go ahead and present you guys with a case study. So what I try to do is kind of tie these issues of mobility into function so that you can see the relationship between how people are moving and potentially what's going on. So when you see it or kind of come across this in your practice, you come across this in your gym, that you start to recognize some certain patterns. And certainly these patterns are not set in stone and they're always unique to every individual athlete, but being able to kind of see them makes a big difference. So here's the pattern today. An athlete presents with knee pain above the patella. So, part of our schema is to work upstream and downstream of the problem. It's rarely, the problem at the patella. That is the issue. Can be, certainly. So this athlete has been mobilizing the tissues around the suprapatellar pouch, the VMO. He's kind of worked on the mechanics upstream and downstream. He's a little bit miffed. So we're going to put some videos up after this just so you can see some of the motions. Here's what's going on. And from a hippo, we've got his permission, so don't worry, you can't see him. But here's what's going on. The athlete, it turned out that he's a big, strong kid. He can do deadlift 465 for a triple, and he can squat about 400 pounds, which is not bad on anyone's radar. So one of the things that happened was that he did a kind of a high-rep burpee broad jump workout and described landing and having some knee pain after that. Hadn't had a history of knee pain before that. So when I asked him to stand, and we'll put it with the photos up, he's pretty collapsed. And some of the telltale signs are his toe, one of his toes is kind of bent over a little bit, which means that he's probably walking around his mechanic or around his ankle, and he's turned off. And this is called hallux valgus. One of the other problems is that that knee ends up kind of collapsing and unlocking like this. So as we look upstream and downstream of the issue, and this athlete being very strong, plenty competent, this is what we ended up seeing in his squatting position, is that his feet really collapsed in, and you could really see, he's like, oh yeah, I have flat feet. When we got him into a more neutral, organized position, he could maintain that arch. When he was squatting, we want to just show you that you can control that foot position and get yourself back into a much more neutral position. The problem is that if he's squatting here, he'd run into a block on his ankle and then have to compensate and go around that block. So this is one of the reasons that ankle range of motion is so important in our athletes, and that we make sure that as our athletes are running, that they can translate over, and that if we see athletes all the time who looks like they have enough ankle range of motion, what they really are doing is going around and creating a kind of weird twist in the ankle. So that's the setup. We were able to kind of get him much more orientated into keeping his knee out over neutral foot, not over collapsed ankle, and we'll show you some of that stuff later on. We're going to do some pieces on kind of what neutral is in your feet here coming up, because we see this a lot in runners. But we'll show up the video. So here's the homework though. Today first I want to we gave him an ankle mob that he could work on himself. And it's important that as we kind of work on some of these distraction pieces, that we don't let the ankle collapse. And here's this kind of notion that goes along with this upstream downstream piece, is that I don't ever mobilize in a bad position. So what was happening is that when this guy was stretching his calf, he would always collapse down, and now that ankle's in a collapsed position, the knee is no longer over the middle of the foot or past the foot. Certainly knee should at least be over the middle of the neutral foot or wider, not over the middle of the inside wherever the foot is planted. So anchoring down, we can get him working on doing kind of this mulligan technique where we're just gliding in, really trying to keep the ankle in neutral. It wants to collapse, but grinding him and getting him at the kind of limit where he starts to impinge. Try that. Let's go ahead and get you guys up on the wall today with a shoe on. It's also, in this position, the tendency, as you can see, is the foot wants to collapse in and roll in, and that's that fallen navicular. We see that kind of collapsed foot. That's the rule, ends up being a mechanical mess later on. We see ankle impingement, all kinds of stuff. I need to mobilize in a good position, which means I try to keep myself in a neutral foot and then wind that up. And then from that position, I can twist around and find the corners that are tight, but don't go ahead and just start off collapse and wonder why you're having a problem. It's got to be neutral. All right, so that's that. The other thing that you'll notice on the video, besides the gross ankle problem, is that he's missing all of his internal rotation. So when we put him in a neutral, and he's got plenty of extra rotation, but he doesn't have any internal rotation. He can't get his leg out 45 degrees before the block. It ends up being kind of a hard block right at zero. So one of the things he tends to do as he squats, he's got to compromise that. Now the leg is in neutral again, and then you can see what the mechanics is down below. So we have an ankle block and a tight block. up and above and below the knee prop. So second piece of homework today, let's go ahead and get you guys loading that hip capsule up. You do kind of that basic capsule stretch with the distraction, and this is what makes this neutral. I'm only at 90 degrees, not a big deal. Get as much approximation to the hip as I can. Band pulls me laterally, I load up, and then I can add a little bit of internal rotation here by just kicking the foot over. I can hook that foot on something if I need, kick the foot over, but it's the approximation and the distraction that keep me from impinging. So I'm not ever impinging myself, but I'm working on improving the position, and I'm just going to oscillate back and forth here, push myself into a little bit more flexion. The distraction and a compression in the back makes it. So work upstream and downstream. Keep yourself in good positions to immobilize. Help your athletes to squat more. Talk to you tomorrow.